Oh, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Hopefully Heather will join us and we get the initial stuff out of the way. So call the meeting of the Capital Planning Committee order at 5:20 p.m. on November 10th. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. All town facilities are open. They're limited hours by appointment only. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. So before we start, is there any public comment from the committee? Dave?
Thanks, Damon. It's more a question than it is public comment. I was surprised that we didn't, at the last Finance Committee meeting, that we didn't have on our agenda to discuss the vote we had taken to suggest changing the dollar amount for minimum dollar amount for capital projects and the other verbiage that we added to it. My concern is if we go through this process, which I don't see it on the agenda for this coming Thursday either, and I just sent the chair a message, hopefully it can be revised. If we make that change, what are we going to do with capital projects that come in for 2022 that are under that threshold?
So I did reach out to Terry. She said the last meeting you kind of focused on the town meeting warrant articles, so it wasn't a great fit. And I thought it was going to be on the agenda for this week. So thanks for following up with her, and I can do the same. Again, assuming Finance Committee is on board for our recommendation, we still need to bring it to the Board of Selectmen. And we'll see when we get that all done and how we want to treat the projects that we get presented to us this year. We'll see how many of them conflict with that new threshold. That'll be interesting, but we'll have to, again, depending on when we get that approved, if we get it approved, we'll just have to decide if we want to apply it to the request that we get this year or moving forward.
I think that leaves it kind of open-ended. I hope we'd have a recommendation at the meeting that the Board of Selectmen take it up if they are going to approve it that night as to what the implementation is actually going to be. I honestly don't care how it's implemented. I just want to have it very clear as to how and when it's going to be implemented. I had hoped it would make it in before 2022 requests came in so that the department heads would be aware that that number was in play. But if it doesn't make it, so be it.
Yeah, we can make a point to set an active date for the new policy when we meet with the selectmen. So
okay, thank you.
Everyone's clear. Anybody else? Any comments from the public? Don't see any hands. We didn't have the opportunity to type up the minutes from last meeting. We'll get on that. Still looking for a volunteer for the secretary position if anyone wants to make it. Heather said she'll be with us shortly, but I think she probably already has an understanding of the request from the school, so we can start with the presentation from the school and what their capital requests are. Oh, there's Heather.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So who wants to make the presentation? Do you want me to try to walk through the slideshow on my end, or do you want me to give the presenter tools to somebody else?
Mr. Londa will walk us through an explanation of each of the projects as part of the capital plan. if you want to go ahead and share the slides, that would be fine.
Okay, I will attempt to do that. Tom, you told me how to do it last time. How do I share the, oh, there it is, share screen. Gotcha. Can everybody see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Londa, if you want to start and tell me to change the slide when you're ready.
Thank you. John Londa, Director of Facilities for Lunenburg Public Schools. This slide set is meant to focus on the FY21 capital requests from the school department. We have already kind of wrapped up a lot of the things that we were trying to get done with FY21. All the asbestos abatement project that we had for FY21 is probably 90, 96, 97% complete. We are still waiting for some paperwork from the contractor, and we're still holding funds until we get the closeout documentation on the asbestos project for FY21. But that project wraps up the 5-year asbestos abatement program to remove the spray-on asbestos that we had above the ceilings at Turkey Hill Elementary School. So next slide, please. So, and also in FY21, we had approved $10,000 to do air conditioning design for Lunenburg Primary School. It was a lead-in for our #1 priority request for this FY22. And it was, like I said, to set the stage for it. We went out for bid for proposals, and we had DeGiorgio Associates was unfortunately the only qualified vendor that we got. We had some others that had expressed interest and had submitted proposals. However, those proposals arrived late. But I feel comfortable that we can work with DeGiorgio Associates on this project. DeGiorgio Associates is the architectural firm that is doing the Pasio's redesign work. Anyway, their scope of work is to come up with a cost estimate, to develop the cost estimate, to develop the construction documents needed for the bidding process, permitting, and construction. And their work is going to be based on the work that was done in 2004, 2003, 2004, as the primary school was being designed. The sketch on the right represents a section of the roof of Lunenburg Primary School. Vertically, you'll see a series of skylights, and then immediately to the right of that, 2 large triangles. And those 2 large triangles represent ERU1 and ERU2. One is the lower one, and the upper one is ERU2. And in the initial design of the school, the recommendations were to have 2 stage 2 air condensing units, 128 MBH rated for ERU1. And if you look just below that lower large triangle, you'll see a couple of squares. That represents the location for where those could go on the roof. And then for ERU2, 1 larger 382 MBH rated condensing unit. And once again, just to the upper part of the large triangle for ERU2, you'll see just a large square there. So that's a location for that to go. So we'll be providing DeGiorgio a set of plans and specifications that we already have from the construction in 2003 for their review. Next slide, please. This is an actual photo, shows those two energy recovery units. The one in the foreground, that's ERU2, ERU1 beyond that. And you can see we already have some air conditioning units up there for the media center and a lot of the offices that are in the primary school. Next slide, please. Also, we're looking to add, besides those condensers, we would like to try to add in air conditioning for the cafeteria and the music room. The section of the building you see is to the right of the main entryway. The 4 windows on the lower floor represent the cafeteria, and there is a unit ventilator associated with the space for each window. And then above that is the music room, which the 2 windows, there is one relief vent on the left side and a unit ventilator on the right side. So we're looking to try to add cooling coils in the 5 unit ventilators and place condensers outside to the right of the cafeteria. And they would bring cooling lines into the school along the side of the cafeteria, run them behind the units and into the cooling coils. And then there's a chase that gets up to the 2nd floor that would be able to be used to run coolant lines to the unit ventilator that's in that room. So that's the other part of this, and that would really give us a school that, for all intents and purposes, would be air conditioned at all spaces with the exception of the gymnasium. Next slide, please. So one of the projects that was deferred at the annual town meeting was the Turkey Hill Elementary School admin air conditioning. The intent there was to add 3 split systems to the admin section of the building. The picture in the lower right shows a multi-zone split system. So we would think we would see at least 2 of those. One that would cover the nurse's office and the head end room. And then the second one that would cover the principal's office and the secretary's office. And then the last one would probably be just a single zone system for the guidance conference room. So we would wind up trying to put those condensers on the roof. We would obviously need to run power to them and coolant lines down. And then, the fan unit would go on the wall in those spaces. So that's what that item is. We had that as our second priority for FY22. I know this will be also, looked at the special town meeting on November 17th. So should that be funded at that time, then this would come off our request for FY22. Next slide, please. So the third request we had was to deal with some exterior repairs to Turkey Hill Elementary School. We're having, while the building's in generally good shape, there are some things that are causing concern, things that we've been looking to try to deal with. One of them has to do with some concrete window sills, and it's really in 2 different locations. One of them is this slide shows on the right a picture of exit 4, which comes out of the mini gym. And you can see directly above the 2 doors, some concrete, and then you see the sills themselves. You can see a lot of heavy deterioration on one of the concrete sills. So we're looking to try to get that replaced, and then anything else that gets found up on that section, but primarily that sill itself is of concern. And then on another section of the building, we have very similar type windows on the area that is near the kitchen, part of the building, kitchen and there's a tech room, and then there's a shop. That has got some areas where we're seeing that two of the sills in the freeze thaw cycle are jacked away from the wall, probably about 1.5 to 2 inches. So that's a repair that's also needed. And then the last part, which is probably the bulk of the work really, is to deal with the membranes that are deteriorating on the fascias on the first floor parts of the building. And we're looking at, that's is a plywood structure that is covered with a membrane. The membrane is original, and over the course of time, it has essentially been shrinking, and as it has shrunk down, it's created gaps in the membrane. Some of the membrane is come loose on the lower part of the fascia. If we could go to the next slide, we'll see a kind of a typical scene where you see a split in the fascias, and in this case, you can see behind it the plywood. So we're looking to have all of those membranes removed, and then just a aluminum wrap to go on the plywood. This is so it's pretty extensive amount of linear feet that we have. Next slide, please. So total length, it's 482 feet worth of fascia to be repaired. This front awning, you can see there's a total of 222 feet. That's the cost, the entire front of the awning, the sides of the awning, and then along the front, the fascia that's along the front windows of the building. There's a courtyard that is between the administration, the connecting hallways, and the library, which is another 164 feet. And that actually is the worst section is inside this courtyard. And then finally, there's another 96 feet that is on the connecting hallways on the exterior. So if you're outside the school, you'd actually see these. And the picture in the previous slide was taken from one of those connecting hallways on the exterior. So those are the pieces that we're looking to get taken care of. We would probably consider trying to get one of our local architects to help draw plans for this. It just makes, I think it's a very visible project because I mean this is something you look at as you approach the school. And everybody coming to the school sees these fascias and said they are in poor condition. So those are the slides for the FY22 projects that we're proposing. I just would like to comment briefly on the overall capital plan for the school department for the FY22 through FY31 period. So, we're looking at selected things to be done for Turkey Hill Elementary School to keep the building in good shape through the point where a decision is made as to what happens with the building, whether it be a renovation or a replacement. We have some work for Lunenburg Primary School. Once again, selective work. The primary school is at the 15-year mark already. So we're looking at this air conditioning project, which once again is kind of something that harkens back to the actual initial construction. We know that we are concerned about the fire alarm system, and we're showing that as a major expense in FY23 for $165,000, and that's pretty much a complete replacement. There is potential to do something less than a complete replacement, but most of our concerns are having to do with the main panel of the fire alarm system, which was a Faraday product. Faraday was bought by Siemens, and Siemens is no longer supporting that system. So we cannot get smoke detectors matched to the to the main panel. We cannot get replacement boards for the main panel. So while it's fully operational currently, but it does have some concerns during the coldest part of the year. We can, if the building is does not stay at a kind of a reasonable temperature or drifts down towards 60 degrees, we start seeing problems with smoke detectors going in and out of trouble. So it's something that has been a long-term problem. This is not a new issue, but the concern that we can't get replacement detectors and cannot get replacement boards is kind of driven the urgency to bring this further forward. And then also for the primary school in FY26, we have listed $130,000 for gas condensing boilers. This is a project that, is something that can be dealt with a number of ways. MSBA usually can assist with that kind of work. We also could see green community dollars going towards this. So that is, is for the future. We certainly don't need it now, but the boilers for the primary school will be 21 years old at that point. And while they are not at the end of their life, they are getting close, and there are better options for more efficient boilers that we could tap into. And that's why I think that potentially the green community is a good way to look at how to fund that. Beyond that, the district is showing a number of vehicles in the plan throughout this period as we start dealing with aging vehicles that are used for plowing school grounds, an aging mower, and also proposals come up for a potential passenger van as a way of potentially cutting costs with transporting athletes to events. So that's the FY22 through 31. We keep adding projects at the very end of this period. I think they're meant to really represent the fact that the building by FY30 will be, or FY29 will then be 60 years old, and a need for a decision on a way forward for either renovation or replacement will be needed as you get deep into this 10-year plan. That's all I have. If you have got questions, I'll be glad to entertain those.
Thanks, John. Do you have the dollar amounts for the requests for this year?
Yeah, so for FY22, we had an estimate of $290,000 for the AC for the primary school. Once again, DeGiorgio will take that number and we'll make that closer to where it surely should be. That number was based upon what we did at Lunenburg Middle High School when we added air conditioning to the rooftop units there. And we added, I believe it was 6 units at a cost of roughly $500,000. So we think there's some room for this to come down. For the admin air conditioning, we had that in the FY21 at $28,000. We've held it the same here. Once again, if that gets approved in November, then that can come off. And then the exterior envelope repairs, we have that at $67,000.
Great. I see Dave has his hand raised. You have a question?
Yep. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Wander. As usual, very complete and precise presentation, easy to understand and real good information. And having the long-term vision always growing out from the present year we're working on is always great to have available to us. Excuse me. My questions go back to Turkey Hill Elementary and the exterior. And I haven't followed it really closely in the last 3 to 5 years, to tell you the truth. But I know along with what you're proposing to work on in this project that you have before us, I'm wondering if any other work has been done. The upper part of the wall windows along what I've always called the cafetorium, which would be the driveway side of that same wing that you're doing the back side where the kitchens are, and any of the other window issues that were identified, I don't know, 3 to 5 years ago as being, air blowing through cracks and so on.
Sure. So we got funded for a green community project to deal with these fascias and the windows. And what we did with the fascias is interior to the building, we had insulation board added to the backside of the plywood, and then it was sealed. And that was done at all of the accessible locations where we could get to this. And most of it's accessible, not all of it was. So there were, where we had hard ceilings, we couldn't get that in there, but the two connecting corridors were both insulated on both the brick side and the window side. And then all of the offices in the administrative area, so the principal's office, nurse's office, and the guidance conference room area all had that board put in and sealed. And then for the windows, what we did, the grant funded us to come in and have a vendor seal all the upper transoms in the building. So those became non-operable windows. And so there was sealant placed on the edge of the window. It was closed and then permanently closed. And the reason why we did that was because we just were having problems where if somebody got a window open, a transom window open, they didn't see it and nobody would know, and it would just stay, cracked open, not wide open, but just cracked open and be leaking air. So those all got sealed and closed. The lower windows, which were the operable windows, those all got additional sealant on the edges of the window so that when those close, they have a better seal on them. They're steel windows. They're only single pane, but it was metal on metal. This gave them a little rubber gasket on the edge of all the windows. So we did, through the Green Communities Grant, we did get that funded and all that work has been completed.
That's great to hear. I have one more question, if I may. The membrane work that you have planned in this project, are there provisions in the project to evaluate the plywood and how damaged or deteriorated it is, and either in a change order process or some other way remove and replace any that's really bad, or are we just going to cover over everything?
So I think would have to look at that, once the membrane comes off, and there's clearly some places that might have some issues. I don't really see anything that's like immediately red flag, but once they pull it all off, we would find anything else. But it would be the areas where the membrane gaps occur, and where you saw that one photo where they kind of opened up. That's an area that we would look at. If it's structurally sound, we'll probably just go over it. But if it's punky, we would definitely get it replaced.
Great. That's the end of my questions. Thank you very much.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Wanda? No. Thanks as always, John, for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Anything else you want to share with us as far as the school's present and future plans, or you off the hook for the night?
I don't have anything further.
All right. Heather, I assume all this information was filled into the Google spreadsheet that we have put together?
Can't hear you, Heather.
Yeah.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah, there you go. Now we can.
Okay. The spreadsheets that I sent to the to the committee? You mean?
Yeah, did you send us the filled in spreadsheet? The one-
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I have it.
All right. Great. So we can, as we start receiving this information, we can look through that and see all the categories and the weighted values that we will be using in the future to review these. Do you have anything else for us, Heather? Or is-
The only thing was, I sent the committee an update on the fiscal 21 projects that were approved at the annual town meeting,
Yep.
their status. So if you wanted to review that, that was the only other thing I had.
Sure. I have it here. I'll try to share it. I don't know if it'll be legible to everybody.
I need to blow it up a little bit.
Anyone read that?
Yep.
Okay, so starting with the first project, that was the ADA ramp sidewalk in front of Town Hall. So that project is part of the Complete Streets program, and that project will, is currently being designed and all the survey work done for, so it can go out to bid this winter with a construction start in the spring of 2021. The second project, the Flat Hill Culvert Design project, that is currently underway. The engineer is doing survey work now to prepare for that fully designed project. And they'll also be preparing a small bridge program application for that project as well. The Turkey Hill Elementary School asbestos abatement project, as Mr. Londa indicated, that project's substantially complete. That is, they're just waiting for some documentation for the final payout for that project. The police vehicle, the vehicle has been ordered and the estimated delivery date for that vehicle is January of 2021. The
Could I interrupt for just a second?
Mhm.
Is that still an ACO vehicle? I thought that was changed.
That's below. The police vehicle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Okay, yep, my eyes skipped right over it.
Okay.
Sorry. to
The
interrupt.
self-contained breathing apparatus, that has, that was ordered and has been received. The advanced life service equipment, that the monitor was able to be covered by the CARES Act funding. And the other related equipment, which was the vending machine, if you would call it, with the drug for the fire department, that is complete, a purchase as well, and in hand as well. The ACO vehicle, animal control officer vehicle, that vehicle has been ordered and that estimated delivery date is spring of 2021. The overhaul of Squad 3, that project is partially complete. The pump project is currently underway. I believe they're about a week before they're complete the pump. And once that, the pump portion of that is complete, it will be delivered to the dealership because that's where the unit came from, so they can do the remaining work on that project. The portable radios, those have been ordered and they've received about 80% of the radios to date. The AC design for the classrooms at the primary school, that project is in progress, as Mr. Londa explained, and DiGiorgio will be doing that design and cost estimate. The senior center reconfiguration of the front entrance, that project went out to bid and we awarded that project last week to a contractor. So that's in progress as well.
Great. Any other questions there? All right. So action items for next meeting. Who do we have presenting to us next week, Heather? Oh, you're on mute again.
The 24th would be our next meeting.
Okay. And who's going to be with us? Do you have your
That
sense?
the fire and police will be invited for that meeting. And I spoke with the new director today, DPW director, about coming to the following meeting after that.
Okay. Are we shooting for 5:15 again?
I
That work for
believe
everybody?
that's what was agreed on.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any action items they want to say? Oh, Tom.
I just have a question. Again, getting up to speed with capital planning. So from the school side, I heard Mr. Lonzo say that with these proposed FY22 air conditioning units, that the primary school would be completely cooled. I don't know if you'd say air conditioned, but let's say everything would have some kind of cooling. Is that correct? First of all, did I hear that right?
Yeah, that's correct. The energy recovery units those two units cover a huge part of the building.
So what about the other schools? Are the other schools all air conditioned, and is it the goal? So two-part question. What is the status of the air conditioning in the other schools, number one? And number two, is it the goal to eventually have all the schools air conditioned?
The middle school, high school, of course, when we ended that project, it had air conditioning for all classrooms, auditorium, cafeteria. The only spaces that weren't air conditioned was the gymnasium. So yeah, so that one is complete, and the primary school will wind up pretty much in the same boat, where all the classrooms, all the cafeteria, the gym wouldn't be. Now, Turkey Hill is like a completely different situation there. Obviously, we're dealing with the admin area, trying to deal with that, because we at least have some place where we can put people that are, we need to get them out of the heat of the building. But the primary school is not likely to be air conditioned. I don't think, at least in its current configuration. It's all unit ventilators. There's not a capability of just adding that there, because we don't have the rooftop units.
Okay.
Or the ductwork, right? You don't have the distribution like you have existing in the other.
Yeah, all we have is exhaust ductwork. So that building's operating, as it was designed in 1968. So it's got unit ventilators to bring fresh air in. It's got exhaust venting out through the roof, and so I think that's certainly something that will get looked at, and could be one of the decision points on whether or not you renovate or whether you replace.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. See, Paula has a hand raised. Or Wendy, do you have a question?
I did a clarifying question for Mr. Londa. At the middle high school, it's not air conditioning per se in classrooms. It's dehumidifying.
So yeah, so we call it cooling. So it's something
Right, it's
less
not
than
air
full air
conditioning.
conditioning. And so like classrooms they operate in it's not an individual room control. It's a wing or groupings of classrooms, and those are maintained to around 75 degrees, at the coolest. So it's not it's not like you walk in and it's 70. It's not. It's 75. It's very comfortable. It pulls out the humidity that's in the air. Makes for and we're not hearing complaints out of our middle school, high school with what we've been operating at.
Fair enough. I just wanted to clarify it, because it's not, I didn't want it to be thought that there was actual, air conditioning as most folks think of it throughout the entire middle high school.
Thanks. Paula, you had your hand up?
Yep, just a question, John. You talked a little bit about the smokes and the fact that, Faraday was bought by Siemens and the components aren't available. And you talked about that there are some concerns during the colder part of the year. And I'm just wondering what kind of problems are occurring? Are the fire alarms going off, or what happens? And I didn't catch what year you're looking to replace those.
Okay, so this is, he said, this has been a long-term problem. It started year one that we're in the school, and then it's not all year long, but if we take the school and say we go to a week when we don't have anybody out in the school and we allow temperatures to drift down to an average of 60 degrees, we will find detectors, or a detector will go into trouble. Which is recognizing that it's there. Oh, yes, it is there, and it clears the trouble, and then it can start into a cycle where it's just back and forth between, oh, it's in trouble, not in trouble. Every time it goes into trouble, it sends a phone message to our monitoring company, and so while it's not a very large part of the building, this process where it's in trouble and not in trouble. And typically always happens at the coldest part of the day. So in the middle of the night, we'll have a device that just starts going in and out of trouble. And we have to either try to remove the device, or do something to try to make sure that the monitoring company is just not bombarded by phone calls. So, part of the strategy we've had to cope with this has been to sort of say, okay, well, look, we're not going to allow the building to just drift down to 60 degrees and try to maintain that. While that's a great energy strategy, it does cause problems with this fire alarm system. And I've talked to anybody who I can talk to about Faraday fire alarm systems and why this is occurring. And, we're not really been able to find anybody that can say, oh, well, this is definitive. A lot of them come back to, well, maybe it's a problem with the board, maybe it's a problem with the model detectors. The detectors, should be able to handle that per their spec sheet. This is not an environment that they shouldn't be able to tolerate, but it has been, I said, it's been a problem every year. It only shows up for a short part of the year, but it's not comforting to have a system that at the coldest part of the year is as reliable as far as not calling out, just calling out and all the time. Nobody wants to monitor a system that gets a runaway system attached to it. So that's why we had this further back in the system. We've now pushed this into FY23.
Okay.
And like I said, we're showing a full replacement. That's all the initiating devices, such as pull stations and smoke detectors, as well as the main panel and all of the notification devices, horns and strobes that are throughout the building. So conceivably, we might be able to live with the horns and strobes and not replace them. So we might be able to cut this project down, but there's like 200 smoke detectors in this school. There's a lot of smoke detectors, and every space is either sprinkled and has a smoke detector.
Okay.
So it would be a one-for-one replacement on the detectors, but like I said, conceivably, you might be able to keep the horns and strobes.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Dave?
Yeah, just from what John just said in regards to that project with the fire system, do you foresee any kind of outside funding being available for that? I think traditionally what we've done with something like this is got it into the capital projects lists. And if we have the money in 2023, fund it, but always hope for some outside funding to take its place so we can move that money somewhere else. Do you see any opportunities, at least at this point, and things change from year to year.
So, you know, I would say it's not likely that we could get grant funded in the current budget year. Senator Chan did, come forward and say, if you have, urgent projects, we did offer this one as an urgent project. Because like I said, if it's not urgent today, but if the main panel went, then all of a sudden you're in an urgent problem because you will not have a working fire alarm system. So it's mostly preventative, but it is a concern.
Through you, Damon, to the town manager, is that project in a bond that's been approved, or was anything done with that particular project?
That project was part of a bond bill, but it was also submitted in this year's and last year's budget priorities list to the legislators. And I'm waiting for confirmation from Senator Tran's office to see if that project was one they put forth for an earmark for this year, with the caveat that they said it's highly unlikely that there be extra funds this year for earmarks, but they'd still advocate for our needs.
Would this be considered a municipal infrastructure project? Because there was grant money in that bond issue for that type of project.
That project was part of that bond bill, the chapter 157, I think, of the acts of 2020. But as everyone knows, bond bills, we may never see those funds.
Yeah, those funds are available for up to 5 years, I believe.
But the
That's what
governor
I was
has to
told.
do that.
Right, the governor has to release them and
Mhm.
so on. Yes. Thank you.
You have something else, Heather? Your hand is raised. Okay. Paul, is it safe to assume that you're a new planning board appointed member, or are you just hanging out with us tonight?
No, I am. Matt took on some other responsibilities, so I'm it.
I'm
Okay.
glad she's a member and not just hanging out. That would be very disconcerting.
Well, thank you for
Glad to
volunteering.
have you.
Thank you.
All right. There's any other comments, questions from the committee or public, anyone? All right, with that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn at 6:07.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor in the order that I see you? Wendy,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Paula,
Aye.
and I for myself. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you.
Night,
on
everybody.
Everyone.
Night, everybody.
24th to
Good
talk about
night.
fire.
See you soon, Tom.
Good night.